Hello, hello, hello. There are certain things in this world that are infinite. Mankind's desires and his stupidity. It is far much easier to predict the end of the world than it is to predict the end of capitalism. Hello, hello, hello. We're just jumping straight into it. No lube or anything, no foreplay or anything. I know it's been a while. I have not made one of these videos in quite a long time. Today we're switching it up a little bit. I am in my hood taking a walk, and let's see what we can discuss. It has been way too long. It has been way too long. And yes, I might as well be speaking to myself in these videos, but hey, who knows? I love the fact that I'm able to post this content as often as I can, if time allows me, and if I'm unable to do so, whether personal issues or because I'm just too caught up doing other things. I'm just glad to know that I'm able to still come back to this little thing. It's my baby and I want it to grow. So without further ado, let's just jump straight into it. No more foreplay, guys. I promise we're jumping straight into it. So today I really want to ask a question that I feel should or might or will resonate with a lot of African people. Are you really free? Really? Are you free? The question is just as simple as that. Are you really free? You celebrate Africa Freedom Day, you celebrate your individual independence days according to what year you attained independence from your various colonizers, but are you really free? There are many reasons as to why people feel Africa did gain its independence, and here is historically and factually what actually had happened. You see, during the Second World War, the one where the Jews got massacred, during that World War, in a nutshell, because of course I never come here to give you unnecessary history lessons, and less, of course, I feel it is prudent to what I am discussing. So it is, of course, contextually important to understand the history. Now, during, or rather after, the Second World War, British Prime Minister Winston Churchill and US President at that time, Roosevelt, met up at the Atlantic Charter? Correct me if I'm wrong about this one. Don't quote me on this one. But to discuss, of course, the independence and the liberation of African nations, because, of course, it was not good for them to keep living under British colonial rule or French colonial rule or whatever country had colonized Africa at that time. It was unwise and popular, and that they wanted people to have their own systems of governance, rule their own economies and understand their own people, their own nation from the perspective of their own leaders. Nobody wants to be ruled by somebody who's foreign. So why would you think the Africans wanted any less? So it's quite interesting to see how the history in itself pans out in such a way that it makes it seem like there is a vested interest into liberating Africa, but well, throughout this video you will understand why I believe the independence of Africa served nobody but the people who had colonized it in the first place. Another factor that depopularized colonization here in Africa was the fact that after the World War, they were broke. The Europeans were broke. Basically, they could not afford to keep on funding their businesses here in Africa and post-war problems back in Europe. That means you're gonna have to let go of one. Let go of some heavy shit, or else you will sink with the whole boat. Now, talking about the independence of Africa, colonization, and what led to colonization in the first place is very prudent in discussing why Africa is the state that it is in the state that it's in right now. We can speak of how Africans are lazy, they elect corrupt leaders, they do all sorts of these things, but these things are quite prevalent in other people's countries too. Three ways, four if we're being very specific, in which a nation can be colonized. You can take over its religion, take over its economy, you also take over its politics. When you control these three things, you are able to understand and capitalize on all the things that that country is good for. Now, If you come to a country like Zambia, you take its politics and teach them your own foreign politics. You take its religion and teach them a foreign religion. You take their resources and use them to your own benefit and teach them how to use and manage their own resources in terms of their economy. And you have basically taken over the entire nation because you have taken over their mindset, their livelihood, and their spirituality. Three things that are quite cardinal in, I believe, the betterment of any human being, if I'm being honest. But due to the fact that this was quite a big factor that they had used in order to encompass not just this country alone, but several other countries in Africa, you understand that it took more than just fixing the economic aspect in order to just be entirely free, you know? I will use this country, Zambia, as an example because it is quite the remarkable benchmark to use to compare yourself to other countries and the experience that they had. South Africa, Malawi, Namibia had also experienced something similar. The southern part of Africa was colonized by the British. That is why all of us speak English. That is why all of us actually have the same accents. We also eat the same meal. Do you even wonder why we eat bread and tea for breakfast? Like, the tea is such a British thing. It's also just now become an African thing, you know. So I'll use this country as a benchmark. We had quite the remarkable leaders that had led us into independence, or rather free from colonization, which I do commend. We had freedom fighters like Kenneth Kaunda, Simon Mwansakapwepwe, Mama Betty Chikamonega. Quote me if I'm mispronouncing or giving her the wrong last name. I'm not so sure about that one. But quite a number of freedom fighters fought for the independence of this country because they were educated. Which brings me to my second point. You see, education is the key to alleviating ignorance, not the key to success. No. Education has been rather the path that nudges you in the right direction to lead you to success, is the right way I would put it, honestly, because quite a number of people have doctorates, degrees, and are not successful. So I would beg to differ, but that's besides the point. Education is the key to the lack of ignorance. You see, once our leaders started educating themselves, not just here in this country, but throughout Africa, once certain people started going, bambo kulaiskif, parakasa, started analyzing and saying, our countries are really suffering. I cannot be here attaining this knowledge, understanding their policies, their politics, their English, their languages, everything, and not have some sort of rebuttal when it comes to my own country. You know what I mean? So when our renowned leaders started coming back to our countries and forming political parties and, trying to stir up an uproar for the desire for independence, it was very apparent that what we lacked was knowledge. It was education that we lacked. It was why it was easy for colonization to take place, because they took over your politics, your religion, your economics. So it was quite easy. But now that people, they started opening their minds, they started having different views, different perspectives. It was like, no, you cannot do this. We know the story and we know how it goes. Eventually, NIPA, is it NIPA? UNIP, sorry. Eventually, UNIP became the dominant party, and of course they were elected and the colonizers were ousted. Well and good. Okay, we've gained our independence, we've taken control, because you never ask for your freedom, you take it, right? All is well and good. We've celebrated our independence. One Zambia, one nation. Tiende pamoja na mtima umoja, right? Yeah, I think that's how the lyrics go. Let's go together with one heart. What happens next? What happens next? How do you manage a country? After all of this independence, after you have gained your knowledge, you have gained your success in independence, what next? Are you really free? we talk about how, yes, these renowned leaders did come back to our country to fight for our independence, but rarely do we talk about the treaties that were signed in order for that independence to be granted. You see, the mind of the colonizer was very funny. It was set up in such a way that you come into somebody's household, take over all their shit, you use all their appliances, eat all the food in their house, and then you ask them to leave. Yeah? But then the ultimatum that they give you is that, okay, if you want me to leave, sign this treaty that at least at the end of every month you will give me some of the food that's in your refrigerator. Does that make any sense? Do you see where I'm going with this? That is exactly what had happened to most of our African countries. Our leaders were forced to sign treaties of independence in order to make it easy for them, or rather for there to be a smooth transition from colonization to freedom, rather independence. Which to me is funny because it is the equivalent of a thief taking over your house and asking for an ultimatum for them to leave the house. You know what I mean? It's funny because like there has been no point in history where these people owned any of the property in this country, but yet they want your mine and mineral deposits. They want the products of all of your economic production. So what about that is freedom? These treaties to me were just another way to keep you colonized, or rather keep being their little bitch that jumped every time they whistled or ran to them every time they whistled. Because when you think about it, yeah, they will always have a share in all of the shit that you do. With colonization came systems of governance that Africans barely understood. If anything, Africans by nature were socialists. What do you call, or rather, what do you refer to a system of redistribution of wealth that was done like in southern Africa, like the Ndebeles, the Zulus, and the Ngonis, right? In which all the products of raiding were distributed amongst the villagers and the people of that community equally. Of course, not equally, but relative to the contribution that you had made. Socialization, rather socialism, in this case was prevalent. We didn't even know what we were practicing, but it was everybody gets to eat type of system, you know. I don't want to just hold all the riches in the world, but due to the fact that colonization came with capitalism, which was a system of governance that had worked for the Europeans, they thought it would work here. Rather, not that they thought it would work here, it was more advantageous to be a capitalist here in Africa. Because if you own one mine as an individual, you own 7 mines as an individual, you can immerse that wealth to yourself and not even give a shit about the people working under you. Now, which one of these things is fair? Because clearly we have a perfect example of socialism working at its peak. We've got China. The opposite being America, which is run by capitalism, and clearly you can see why. Medical care in America is not free. You will literally have to pay with an arm and a leg, which is very counterintuitive, but you know what I mean, yeah? It is quite interesting to see how there's these debates of socialism and capitalism on which one works best, and you're gonna have to eventually keep revamping one, and one just works for the benefit of the other. But truly, it was very strategic. It was quite advantageous to have capitalism as the system of governance here in Africa, because we were the hub of all natural resources. So it made sense that people would get greedy and want to be the only ones owning things in this country, rather in this continent. So you think about things like that and these systems of governance that they had us gotten used to, and the ones that we even continued using even after these people had left, or rather had declared us independent. But you realize that capitalism has never worked for Africans because our system of governance back in the day was socialism. And I'm not saying we should go back to like socialism or need to experiment with socialism, but look at what worked and just compare it to the now and see which one is beneficial. This is something that I'm gonna keep asking you, that I feel should resonate with you, even if you don't think about it. Are you really free? You know, we speak of religions and our politics and how these things are just mimicked off of what they used to do, or rather what colonial masters used to do back in the day, and we haven't changed a thing. We have not changed a damn thing ever since we got independent, which to me is funny because they move, they try to rid themselves of everything that reminds them of their captors. But we kept everything. We kept the mines, we kept the buildings, we kept the houses. I live in a residential area that belonged to the bougie upper class during colonization. That's how shitty it is. So, because capitalism is a system that has been set up for us to fail, we then understand why it is much, much difficult for the simple marketeer who orders fresh vegetables, fresh tomatoes for you to sell on the market will never be as rich as the owner of a company as big as Trade Kings. Because you understand that because power is moving from, rather, money is moving from the bottom up, it can never move from the top down. It just doesn't make sense. People are losing money. The entire basis of capitalism is profit making. If it's not profitable, you cannot do it. If it's not profitable to build houses for homeless people, they won't do it. It's just as simple as that. Oh my god, the scenery has changed. Yes, I'm trying something new. Say hi to my cat. Hi, Mr. Grumbles. No? Okay. His name is actually Coco, he's not Mr. Grumbles. But this is just gonna be another one of your many YouTube algorithm videos that's just gonna pop up on your newsfeed and you're just gonna scroll past. But to me, it is quite prudent, it's quite important to discuss things like this, especially if you live in a country like this or you belong to a country from Africa that has, well, first started out with colonization, then independence, and then whatever conundrum your country is going through right now, whether it is corruption, load shedding, an economic crisis, unemployment, youth unemployment, whatever it is, I can tell you for a fact one African person from whatever African country can resonate with any of the problems I have mentioned so far. And these problems have an origin. It's not something we can just sit on and say, well, our leaders are corrupt, what can we do? They are corrupt because of the systems that were put in place during colonization. But even we cannot fathom that or beyond that because we leave our problems up to the Lord. And we need to stop doing that. He's never gave a shit about you anyway. But hey, let me not provoke some religious individuals, some devout individuals. It's not to speak ill of the Christian faith. It is just to speak ill on the people that use the Christian faith to get ahead, through selfish means. That is what I am against. I truly believe the reason as to why certain things like this are happening is both an internal and an external problem. One that was brought about through years of colonization, and one that is brought about through years and years of our own corrupt leaders. But that is not to say one did not start the other. You know what I mean? So, in lieu of discussing colonization, independence, and everything that follows, I would really love to ask you this question now. Fast forward to 2024, are you really free? Are you really free? Because if you are, you will not be subjected to systems of governance which were not of your own making. You would not be subjected to religions that were not yours to begin with. You will not be subjected to ways of life that are not in any way reminiscent of how your forefathers used to live. But hey, I am just a simple YouTuber trying to get information out there however I can with my little channel. It is up to you to then ask these relevant questions to the relevant authorities. Because as a country as we stand, we do not own our religion, we do not own our politics, we do not own our minds, nor our economy. Which is very sad. Because when I think about it, it makes me quite angry to understand who the actual owners are. They never left. They're still here, amongst us, living, breathing. It sounds conspiratorial, but it is true. It is not independence if your people are still suffering at the hands of the same people that made them suffer, that made their grandfathers suffer, you know? So we can talk about our current president, the previous one, and how they were just incompetent in their job. We can talk about the other one who was incompetent, or the other one who was incompetent, but that does not solve the issue. What solves the issue is something more deep-seated, whereby you're gonna have to start uprooting a lot of systems of governance, including capitalism, including certain religions, including certain ways in which we teach our children at school. It's not just a one thing. It's not like you just touch politics and that's it. You just touch the economy and that's it. It's a well-rounded thing. Because like I said, it takes the politics, it takes the religion, it also takes the economy of a nation for you to fully assimilate it. My friend and I joke about assimilating a certain country, and we just need 3 of these things in order to take it over, and we shall have our own country. But it's just that simple. So really think about it. Are you really free? Really truly think about it. Are you really free, or are you just happy with the idea of being free as a country? I wanted to turn this video into a 2-part, 3-part series in which I speak of the current problems currently happening in this country. But then I realized I might keep finding myself at the same stalemate, which is the problem still goes back to that one thing. You know, we do not own our property. Because we don't own our property, we have no say. So even just the way in which these systems roll through will not make sense, or will not be beneficial, at least to us immediately. What can we do? Keep questioning. It's only when you question that you can eventually get the right answers, or at least get somebody frustrated enough to answer you. That's what most people do. Be as stubborn as a badger. What's a stubborn? No, a badger is not an African animal. I was thinking of something else. Be as stubborn as you can be. Ask the relevant questions. Ask those of us that need to make a change. Let us step up. Because it takes people like you and me, especially young people. I will advocate for a lot more young people to involve themselves in politics, to involve themselves in system of governance, because a fresh mind, a fresh brain will eventually, find ourselves with another KK who can actually lead us the right way and take over from where our father of the nation had left off. But as for now, bruv, each man for himself. Nili akwebati economy ngana ekushupira kubomba palo. Not that uleshimpirira mui government ikwafe. The same government that was given to you by somebody else. It's very, very fucked up, I swear.